Alright, so at the Xbox Developer Direct, we of course saw Obsidian reveal a bunch of new gameplay for Avowed. It was gameplay that got me very excited for the game, and I know it got a lot of other people excited as well. However, I did see a fair few express their reservations towards Avowed, even after seeing that gameplay. Now, in the past week, Obsidian has conducted a ton of interviews for the game and revealed so much new information which we need to talk about in today's video. Now, all those interviews are linked in the description below, but I have extracted the most important bits. And I know I'm oversimplifying this, I do, but generally I believe this new information is making those already excited about Avowed even more excited, and making those already reserved about the game even more reserved. I don't believe there's any in between here, but you might disagree. Let me know in the comments below. Please like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you're new with notifications if that is possible. But let's get right into it. We're going to start off with PC Gamer's interview with Obsidian, and they split it up very helpfully, by the way, into 4 different articles. The first one is about Avowed's classes, and it's entitled, Obsidian's Avowed is going classless, ditching Pillars of Eternity's crunchy stat-heavy builds in favor of Skyrim-like ability trees. In a recent chat with PC Gamer's Ted Litchfield, Avowed's game director Kerry Patel and gameplay director Gabe Paramo mentioned that the new game is going a bit Skyrim with it, leaving behind Pillars' game's class system in favor of a set of ability trees you can sample from as you level up. There's multiple ability trees, Paramo told PCG. It is a classless game. The player will be able to kind of pick and choose their abilities as they level up and progress, and you will be able to respec. I just want to pause here and thank Obsidian. Thank Obsidian from the highest mountaintops. I want to scream it. Thank you for letting us respec in Avowed. I am so much more of a fan of games that let you respec, because just think about it, right? I understand why people don't like the thought of respecing. When you choose your skills from the beginning and you dedicate yourself to a particular playstyle, you believe that it's more immersive to stick with that playstyle, and there are other benefits to it. I get it, right? But for me, when I play games that I've never played before, I don't know whether the skills are good or not, or the abilities are good or not. They might sound good on paper, and they might turn out to be crap, or I might pick a playstyle that I think I'll like, and then because of the game and things that I couldn't expect, I might not like that playstyle and I want to change later on. Respecing allows you to do that. I just much prefer games that let you, like Borderlands, even I'm playing Final Fantasy 16, it lets you respec. I really do appreciate that Obsidian is allowing us to respec in Avowed. It just allows, in my opinion, for more experimentation and flexibility. They can even add a bit of a cost to it. Whatever that looks like in the game, if you have to spend money or it's a negative consequence, whatever, I don't care. Just have the option there. More options are good. If they just don't let you respec, I think it just locks you out of so many playstyles, and it gets frustrating, or it can get frustrating later on in the game. So I really appreciate that. Moving on, they say, you will choose between different background archetypes at the game's start, but those don't bind the player to particular choices or builds, said Patel, and instead provide kind of a starting point for building your character, your headcanon. So I really like this because I think it gives a nice bit of both worlds. If you are someone that doesn't like, respecing and just want to commit to a particular playstyle, it sounds like you can pick a background archetype that will suit the playstyle you're going to invest all your abilities in, right? And you don't have to change from that. And it's probably going to pair really nicely with the background archetype that you've chosen. However, for people like me, I'll pick an archetype and I'll probably want to change the abilities later on. And it sounds like I'm not restricted to do that. Even though my archetype might not pair nicely with the new abilities I've respected towards, I think that's fine, right? Whatever. Like, so long as it's not completely locking you down and it's just slightly less of a benefit, then I'm cool with that. And then they continue, plus it's not like all traces of the classes you know and love from Pillars of Eternity are being scrubbed from Eora. Somewhere on those ability trees lurks as many cool abilities as made sense to translate from a kind of CRPG top-down perspective into first person, said Paramo. So you'll just have to wait to see whether you can run headlong into battle singing songs like Kanarua did. I have no idea who that is. I haven't played the previous Pillars of Eternity game. But again, that sounds all right. They're being very coy about it. I wish they would just be a little bit more upfront. Like, the game's coming out this year. I can understand why. They're still tweaking things. They're still developing things, taking into account our feedback. I'll talk about that later in the video. So I get why they're not revealing everything, but just tell us what some of those other ability trees and things are. I don't know. I would like to hear a little bit more. So the next article is about melee in Avowed, and it's entitled Obsidian's next big RPG Avowed is looking to Vermintide's masterclass in having a sense of hitting an impact to make its first-person sword swinging feel weighty. First-person melee combat is hard to design. In any third-person action game, you have all kinds of tools at your disposal. Bespoke animations, the situational awareness of bird's eye view, cool flips, things that are much harder to execute on when you're in your protagonist's skull, especially the cool flips thing. That'll just get you motion sick. Luckily, Obsidian is looking to a dev studio that's basically perfected it over the years. Fat Shark, developer of Warhammer's Vermintide and 40k's Darktide. Our goal was to try and make it feel visceral, right? Primer explains. To make the sense of hitting enemies feel impactful, like Vermintide. We're trying to get our inspiration from there, just that masterclass in having a sense of hitting and impact. I'm definitely really proud of what the gameplay team has done. Even our melee combat is feeling fantastic, says Patel. I really do feel like it's going to stand head and shoulders above when it comes to fantasy first-person action RPG melee combat. This is a really big claim. I've seen a fair few people be critical, super critical, about how melee combat looked in the gameplay for Avowed, right? Some people think like that there's not that sense of impact that they're describing in that interview. It does like it looks all right to me, but it doesn't look like world shattering. It doesn't look completely innovative. I understand that they're passionate about their game and they're really proud of what they do. And you know what? We can't judge until we actually get our hands on it. It might feel exactly like they're explaining. But from the gameplay, in my opinion, and I know a lot of other people's opinions as well, it looked fine. But it didn't look that crazy. I don't know. You might disagree. Let me know in the comments. I'm still happy with how it looked. I just don't think it looked as world-changing as they're describing. So next up is about companions in Avowed. And this article is entitled, Avowed's Companions Won't Ditch You for Making the Wrong Choices. It's not about maintaining their approval. It's about getting to know them. In an interview with blah, 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 we learn the following about Avowed's companions and party management. We'll meet multiple companions throughout Avowed, which is very good, but they're not revealing how many there are yet, and they'll hang out at a party camp. 2 companions can come with you on adventures at a time. Amazing. Great. I don't just want 1, I want 2. I always prefer 2 companions. It just mixes it up, makes it a little bit fun. You might like one and not the other. You boot the other and you get another person. Beautiful, because it gets you a sense of both companions at the same time, and you come to like know whether you like those companions much quicker. I'd have a whole party if I could, but I understand development-wise, that's incredibly difficult to do. Anyways, they continue. There are a few cases where you must include a particular companion in your party because their knowledge or expertise is relevant to the situation. Otherwise, it's up to you. I don't mind that. I don't think that's restrictive at all. I kind of like the fact that if you're progressing in the main story, for instance, and a particular companion has a certain set of skills which you need, I like that you need to bring them along because it gives every companion their opportunity to shine. I don't know. And then they say, it sounds like you can issue some basic orders to companions, but you won't micromanage your party in combat. And they go on to explain that further in a bit. And then finally they say, there's no approval system, but conversations may influence our companions' decisions and stories. So Avowed's approach to companions and party management is much more like that of a Mass Effect game or Obsidian's own Fallout New Vegas. Now we're talking. We might rely on their help in combat, but we won't be giving them granular instructions or controlling them directly. They have moment-to-moment gameplay combat abilities, Paramo told us. They also have, outside of combat, more environmental interaction abilities, and so you can kind of order them to do those abilities both in combat and out of combat. We don't want players feeling like they have to micromanage their party, said Patel. So you know, certainly their abilities are there and they're very useful, but you're not going to be pulling up paws and feeling like you have to move them around every 30 seconds. I love this. I'm such a fan of this. I understand there is a group of people that like the ability to control what their party does. You do this, you do that. You're like a puppeteer, right? Controlling all your puppets on the field. I get the appeal to that, but for me, these companions are meant to be real human people, like an equivalent, as much as you can get in a video game. They should be able to think on their own, act on their own. You don't need me to tell you everything unless you're a robot or a dog or something like that. And even then, I question it. Like, make your own decisions. Defend yourself. Be useful in combat without me needing to tell you to be useful in combat. I hate useless companions or companions that require you to tell them to do everything. So I prefer this. I love this. It sounds good on paper. Again, whether it's actually good, we need to try and play it, wait and see. But otherwise, I'm liking the sound of it. And they go on to say story-wise, companions will each have a personal arc, said Patel, and they'll all be involved in each playthrough. You could recruit some of them a little bit earlier or a little bit later, but they all will join your party by certain known points in the game, said Patel, which allows us to weave them a bit more intricately into events, conversations, and all of the action that's happening. You definitely have quest-based interactions with companions, and they each have their own personal arc, said Patel. As with all of our games, talking to them through that arc and influencing them down a particular course or another can shape what their story is and maybe how they see some of their personal challenges. We didn't go with a strict approval system. We didn't want players feeling like they had to choose the right options in order to maintain their companions. So it's not about maintaining their approval, it's about getting to know them, building relationships with them, and finding points of commonality and strength where they're learning things from you as the player character and you're getting a little bit of their perspective on the world. Now, I don't mind approval systems. Like, I kind of agree when you have an approval system that eventually means you can't have a companion next to you, that kind of sucks because then you're kind of like, oh, I like this companion, so I don't want to get rid of them. It's just weird. It takes you out of it when you're making decisions just to not lose a companion. Like, yeah, if they're an actual companion, the decisions that you make, the things that you do, the things that you say, should influence them in some way, especially if they like you, if they respect you. They should be influenced. They should not just like suddenly be like, I don't want to be with you anymore. Unless you do something so bad and so visceral, that's different, right? But small decisions here and there that make your companions eventually want to leave you, I don't know. Like, I've never been a fan of it. On paper, I do like the way that this sounds. But yeah, I'm liking it. The only thing though, I will say this, the only thing, and I'm going to be talking about it later, is that apparently Obsidian has decided not to do romancing in Avowed. We're going to talk about that in a second. Stay tuned for that. But let's go on to the last article from PC Gamer. This is about playstyle. Obsidian's next RPG, Avowed, won't have the option to do a pure pacifist run. Speaking to PC Gamer this week, game director Kerry Patel said, "This isn't a game where you're going to have a pure pacifist run. Players can expect to see solutions and opportunities to use dialogue, maybe take advantage of reactivity with regards to characters they might have helped or met earlier in," Patel went on, mentioning there will be some stealth solutions, but players should expect a focus on combat. Though Avowed won't let you go full Gundy, it sounds like giving you freedom and how it lets you explore and approach problems is one of Obsidian's aims. We're not planning on one specific linear path that players are going to take through that world, Patel said. So we're trying to account for the various places they could be and the various points of interest they might find and what they might see from there. This, I think, might be a bit of a point of contention amongst players or prospective players in terms of why can't I just do a pure pacifist run? Like, Obsidian, for a developer that focuses so much on choice and being able to do what you want and say what you want, etc., to hear that you can't do pretty much a pure pacifist run in Avowed, that's kind of difficult to reconcile. So I can see some people being upset with that. But for me, at the end of the day, yeah, it's a video game, right? I'm going to do a combat playthrough. Even playthroughs where I might want to talk myself out of most situations or try and find the alternative solution, I'm still going to want to do a bit of combat, right? I'm still investing, I'm leveling up and investing into all these abilities to kill some enemies. That's part of it. It has to be part of it to some extent. So I get that. But really, it's about the balance, right? But let me know what your thoughts are about that, because I'm sure there's a lot of you that would prefer to do a pure pacifist run because it's different. It allows for a very unique playthrough. I understand that it's enjoyable. So going on, we're going to go to the article by Games Radar Plus, actually. And this one is generally about combat and choice in Avowed. It's entitled, "Avowed's Commitment to Ubiquitous Player Choice Could Make It 2024's Standout RPG." At Obsidian, it's your world, your way, right? Says gameplay director Gabe Paramo. We want to give the player the freedom with a dual-wielding system, with combinations, or combinatorics, as I call it. It's a terrible word. Never say that again. People make fun of me for using this term. Yeah, so do I. It's being able to put a pistol in my right hand and a shield in my offhand. I'm blocking and I'm firing. It's the choice and consequence with things like, I'm using a dagger that's quick and it's more silent, and I'm using a pistol that's loud and has a little bit of reload recovery time on it. It's giving the players these tools that let them sort of choose, okay, what do I want to do here? And there's pros and cons to all the choices that I make, and there's no one perfect build. There's going to be, again, choice and consequence for what you kit out with your character. So I really like this, right? And they go on to say that you can respec, as we know from before. But I like the way that the gameplay looked when you could have a wand in one hand and a gun in the other. First of all, just think about how stupid that sounds, right? But it's a video game. Like, let's have fun with it. I like that you can get experimenting with it. I like that there are different loadouts and you can try some crazy stuff and crazy combinations. And to that end, respecking is even more important because you might find that conducting spells pairing really well with like holding a shield. I don't know what kind of combinations there are, but the ability to experiment and have fun with it, I think it's what's going to make for awesome gameplay. So I really like it. I really like that you can dual wield certain things. You don't just have to just use wands or just use a sword. So it's sounding good, right? It's sounding really good. I'm really excited about it. And then they go on to say, to this end, Obsidian aims to increase the fluidity of this choice in combat by again allowing you to respec your character at any time. The overarching aim here is to help you avoid feeling locked into any particular fighting style, and likewise allow you to adapt in the face of new challenges. Environmental obstacles encourage Skyrim-esque ingenuity, whereby fire magic may be required to melt ice or burn through brambles blocking the way, or where heavy weapons are needed to break through barriers. I like that, adds a little bit of interaction into the world. You're not just walking through, talking to enemies and opening doors. Make it a little bit fun, right? Make every encounter a little bit different. I like that. And they go on to say, again, we put a lot of energy and time into our animation blending systems too, Parama continues. Shout out to Max Matzenbacher, our senior combat designer, for what he calls bookends, which are just your range of giving things space. So it's not about making every single weapon powerful. But there are trade-offs to each weapon, like the wind-up time versus the recovery time, making them feel like you're holding them properly and what they look like in view. I really like that, and you want to know why I like that is because if you can hold two different weapons at once, one might have a really slow recovery time. So to offset that, you might have a weapon that you can use at all times, but maybe it does a little less damage. That pairs, in my opinion, really nicely with each other. Having different weapons with different drawbacks and positives, it's a good thing. It allows for fun and experimentation. Man, I'm excited. I'm just saying, can I just say, I am very excited about Avowed. It's sounding really up my alley, but let me know if you have any concerns with what they're saying. Going on though, they say Avowed targets similar levels of breadth and depth in the moment-to-moment decision-making to Fallout New Vegas that shapes its open zone world beyond firefights and storytelling. So by the way, I want to pause there and say, this game is open zoned, it's not open world, and we're going to get to this a bit later on in the video talking about the scale and the scope of Avowed. That's one thing that I think a lot of people are going to find issue with, that a lot of people I know found issue with Outer Worlds. Avowed is not that big of a game, and I'm fine with it. Personally, I love my short games because I don't have enough time to play 100+ hour games all the time. But I know a lot of other people were expecting Skyrim, and you're probably not going to get Skyrim, at least with the scope of the game and how big it is. So they go on to say, our approach to choice and consequence is to eschew a black and white good versus evil morality scale, where the moral balance of your decision is very obvious, but rather something that feels closer to life, where sometimes it's not obvious or sometimes the right choice feels obvious, but the outcome can be surprising, justified by surprising. That's a very, very complicated sentence, says Patel. So I feel that as a designer, I enjoy challenging, and as a player, I enjoy being challenged in that regard, where I really get to chew on something complicated and kind of make and explore those decisions in the relatively safe environment of a game. This just sounds like Obsidian being Obsidian. Like, I love Bethesda, I'll always say it, but decisions in real life, they're not black and white, right? They're always in the middle. There's always a bit of gray to everything in life. And that's what we love about Obsidian games, because they challenge you on that. They're like, you know what, you could do this, but this is not so good, but you might help this person by choosing something else. Like, I want to be challenged in this game to some extent. If I'm playing a Bethesda Game Studios game, maybe not so much. Maybe I just want to be the good guy all the time. But with an Obsidian game, especially with how much they're talking about choice and consequence, and again, like being challenged and whatever, I want to feel that a lot. So I'm liking it. Again, it depends on when we play the game, but everything sounds perfect. But now we're going to get to some more critical stuff, okay? Now we're going to get to the stuff that's been revealed by the interview with Eurogamer, and it's about romancing with companions and the overall development with the game. So this one's entitled, What's Going On in Avowed? We Quiz Obsidian After the Xbox Developer Direct. So first of all, they say, you won't be able to romance companions, notably. You can't romance your companions in Avowed, Patel confirms. I know we did some romances for companions in Deadfire, and that's Pillars of Eternity, but the thing we found, which I'm sure any developer who has tried them has found, is that to pay them off, you really have to invest a lot in doing them well. And you also want to balance whatever you're putting into romantic relationships with ensuring that players who don't choose the romance path still have a fulfilling and complete experience with those companions. The companions in Avowed will be tied more tightly to the story than in previous games apparently, and the team wants to make sure they hit their story beats without confusing the issue with relationships. We wanted to make sure that we were paying that off, and we didn't feel ready to do romances as well, Patel says. Especially because it gets kind of awkward if you're trying to save the world together and then you've broken up, but this person is still traveling with you. Look, Obsidian, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, right? If you want to do romances, you want to do them well, essentially. But just let us romance our characters. Like, come on. Like, you can't not have romancing, especially after a game like Baldur's Gate 3. You can't not have it. People are going to be disappointed. When you're building up so much time with these companions, you're talking to them, getting to know them. Are you really telling me, with all your focus on choice and whatever, that at the end you can't romance your companions because you didn't feel like you would do it right? Come on. I don't know. I think that's going to get a lot of people upset because it's an easy win. It doesn't need to, like, I think they're making a bigger deal of what it really needs to be. Like, yeah, have all the stuff that you want to, but then just let us romance. Who cares? Make it a freaking cutaway scene. Scene turns black, you romance your character. All right? That's fun. Going on. What we saw in the showcase was alpha gameplay and still subject to change. There's feedback on the internet and it's both positive and not as positive, which is fine, he says. And we hear that. And we've already been actively, even as we were watching the showcase, addressing that. So we are continually improving as we share more. But here's the kicker. But Microsoft has not transformed Obsidian or its capabilities. It actually sounds like the studio is the same size it's been for a while. Avowed is made by roughly 100 developers internally, Patel tells me, with the help of a couple of co-developers she doesn't name, and some outsourcing partners which are again unknown. But those are a much smaller chunk of the team than something that you might have on one of those 400-person teams, she says, where you've got 400 internal developers and 3 separate co-dev teams, also of 400. So that gives you an idea. This is why she refers to Obsidian as a medium-sized studio and Avowed as a medium-sized project. As a developer, it's always challenging, Patel adds, because you know what your team size is and what your budget is, but most players don't. You have some players who follow the industry very closely and might tailor their expectations accordingly, but most people who are coming to games just want a good experience, and they don't know what your staff size is or how many dollars you had to spend, and frankly, that's not for them to care about. They just expect a good game. For us, the reference point we were trying to point people to is The Outer Worlds, she adds. That's also a game that has a very comparable scope, a very comparable approach in terms of having a series of open regions, rather than one massive open map that you can walk from one corner of to the opposite in however many hours that takes. It did very well with that model. The team was able to tailor their content and the pace of the experience accordingly. Scope is definitely not equivalent to quality, she adds. So this is where I'm going to end the video because I think it's going to be the most controversial aspect of all of these interviews. Yes, Avowed is a smaller game than what you might expect, all right? Especially when you first think back to their first reveal of Avowed, it really, because they made it CGI and everything, it really felt more grand. It really felt like an equivalent to Skyrim. And I think that set everyone's expectations here when it came to the scale and the scope of the game. So I think to an extent, Obsidian is a little bit to blame, because then when they finally showed the gameplay, it was more colorful. It wasn't as realistic looking in terms of the graphics. And then it started the conversation, so well, how many people are actually working on this game? And it's only 100. It's only 100 people. And to be clear, it's not only 100 because Obsidian only has 100 people. The last time that I saw, I think the number estimations are around 280, maybe 300 people working at Obsidian. To me, there's no reason why all of them can't work on Avowed, right? There's no technical reason why all of them couldn't work on Avowed and make it a bigger game than what it clearly currently is. But they like to develop multiple things. That is Obsidian's approach to developing the games. And you know what? That's the way that they wanted to do it. But it's not going to be a big game. It is going to be similar to scale and scope as the Outer Worlds. And not everyone was a fan of the Outer Worlds because of that. I like the game, right? I need to replay it. But I can see a lot of people criticizing Avowed because it's clearly not as big as maybe a lot of people were expecting, right? So look, I understand where they're coming from on all of that. I also, as I said before, and I said many times, I don't mind smaller games. I don't mind smaller size games because I can finish them in a reasonable time, all right? Doesn't matter what it is, so long as it's a good experience and I get a decent amount of gameplay, I'm a happy man. But I do think they were a little bit at fault with setting expectations earlier on when Avowed was like just announced. So they're having to try and backtrack as much as possible. As much as I like the game and I like the look of it and I'm excited and I like the colorful look, I like the art style, I think it's actually all pointing towards a very, very successful game. I think they're a little bit to blame, and I don't know. I worry that some people are going to get very disappointed by Avowed if they are literally expecting Baldur's Gate 3 or Skyrim. So anyways, Waysanders, I hope this video helped you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, this has been the Lone Vault Wanderer. Please take care of yourself, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.